My uncle bet $10,000 I'd never date again. Now he's broke and living in my basement. When my marriage ended in a fiery disaster, everyone had their opinions. My parents thought I had given up too soon. My friends told me I was better off without my ex. My co-workers awkwardly avoided the topic altogether. But my Uncle Rick? He laughed. Not just a quiet chuckle, but a full-blown, tear-inducing cackle that left me feeling like the punchline of a joke I didn't understand. You, he said, shaking his head. You'll never date again. Mark my words. Now, Uncle Rick had always been that guy. The loud one at family gatherings, the self-proclaimed expert on everything from fixing a leaky sink to understanding women. He'd been married 3 times and divorced 3 times, each split messier than the last. He prided himself on knowing the real truth about relationships, which, according to him, boiled down to one thing. They're all doomed. When I, Emily 32, told him that I planned to take time for myself after my divorce, he smirked. Yeah, because you've given up. Once you've been burned that bad, you're done. You're going to be one of those bitter, single people with a dozen cats. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't getting cats. And I certainly wasn't done. But I was exhausted. 5 years in a marriage that left me feeling like a ghost of myself would do that to anyone. So I focused on work, on hobbies I'd neglected, and on rediscovering what I actually liked outside of being someone's wife. Rick, however, saw this as proof of his theory. I'd bet 10 grand you never date again, he declared at a family barbecue. I thought he was joking, but he made a show of pulling out his phone and setting a reminder. 1 year from today. If you're still single, I win. Fine, I said, rolling my eyes. But what happens if I do date? He grinned. Then I'll pay you 10 grand. I shrugged. It was a dumb bet. I had no plans to date anytime soon. But I also wasn't going to be single forever. It wasn't about proving anything to Rick. It was about doing things on my own timeline. Still, I figured it was easy money. A year was a long time. The first few months after the bet, I barely thought about it. I was busy rebuilding my life, picking up new hobbies, making new friends. Dating wasn't a priority. And to be honest, the idea of starting over with someone new seemed exhausting. I traveled a bit, something I had always wanted to do, but never could in my marriage. I learned how to cook dishes I'd never tried before. I even signed up for a painting class, though my skills left a lot to be desired. But then, something happened. I met Jake, not on a dating app, not at a bar, not through some forced setup. He was just there, a guy at my gym who always took the treadmill next to mine, who always seemed to finish his workouts around the same time I did. We started chatting casually, first about workout routines, then about movies, then about everything. Eventually, those casual conversations turned into long discussions in the parking lot after workouts, then coffee dates, and then real dates. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow and steady, built on mutual respect and an easy, natural connection. I didn't even realize I was dating until one day, 6 months into knowing him, he introduced me to his sister as his girlfriend, and I didn't correct him. That was when I remembered the bet. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. I pulled out my phone and checked Rick's reminder. There was 6 months left. I had done it. I had won. I didn't tell Rick right away. I wanted to wait until the 1-year mark to let him sit in his confidence a little longer. Over the next few months, he kept making smug comments at family events. Found anyone yet? You still enjoying that single life? I just smiled. Yep. He was so sure he had one that he started telling other family members about his big payday coming soon. My cousins laughed behind his back. My mom rolled her eyes, and my dad simply said, I wouldn't count on it. When the day finally arrived, I made sure the whole family was there. Rick was already gloating before I even said a word. All right, he said, rubbing his hands together. Time to pay up. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a recent picture of Jake and me at a wedding, and held it up. Actually, Rick, I believe you owe me 10 grand. The silence was delicious. His face turned red. He leaned in, as if squinting at the photo might change what he was seeing. My parents laughed. My cousins cheered. My aunt clapped. Rick? He looked like he had swallowed a lemon. He tried to weasel out of it. Of course. That doesn't count, he argued. You probably just started dating last week. Nope, I said, scrolling through months of photos. Met him about 6 months in. It's been almost a year now. He groaned, rubbing his temples. I don't have 10 grand just lying around, you know? Well, you shouldn't have made the bet then. For a while, I thought that would be the end of it. Rick would swallow his pride, take a few months to scrape together the money, and hand it over begrudgingly. But that's not how life, or Rick, worked. About 2 months later, I got a call from my mom. Rick's in trouble, she said. Big trouble. Turns out, Rick had a habit of making stupid bets, and my win had set off a chain reaction. He had been so certain he wouldn't lose that he had made similar bets with other people, his co-workers, his poker buddies, even his barber. All those debts added up, and suddenly, Rick found himself drowning. I hate to ask, my mom said hesitantly, but can he stay with you for a bit? I almost laughed. The irony was too perfect. The man who had sworn I'd be single forever was now broke, and needed a place to stay. And not just anywhere in my basement. At first, I wanted to say no. He had brought this on himself. But then I thought about it, about the way he had always been so sure he knew better than everyone else, about how life had a way of humbling people in the most unexpected ways, about how, despite everything, he was still family. So I said yes, but not without conditions. Rick moved into my basement the next week. He grumbled, of course. He hated that he had to follow my rules. No smoking in the house, no loud music, no leaving dirty dishes everywhere. He hated that I made him do chores. But the best part? He hated seeing me and Jake together. So going strong, huh? He muttered one day, passing us in the kitchen. Yep, I said cheerfully. Turns out dating after a divorce isn't impossible. He groaned and disappeared back into the basement. Months passed, and Rick slowly adjusted to his new reality. He got a job, started paying off his debts, and even, shockingly, apologized for being such a jerk about my love life. I wasn't sure if he had truly learned his lesson, but at least he had stopped making ridiculous bets. One day, as he was packing up to move into his own place, he looked at me and sighed. All right, fine. You win. I know. He pulled out a wad of cash and slapped it onto the counter. Here's your 10 grand. Took me a while, but I keep my word. I smiled, not because of the money, though let's be real, it was a nice bonus, but because, for once, Rick had finally admitted he was wrong. And that was priceless.